The morning my world imploded smelled like French roast and betrayal. I was wiping down the espresso machine when I found the first receipt, a crumpled slip of paper that would unravel everything I'd spent the last 3 years building. $47,000 at Bergdorf's, Emily's signature, my business account. My hands trembled as I smoothed the paper on the counter. The early morning sunlight streaming through the cafe windows felt too bright, too harsh. This had to be a mistake. Emily wouldn't, she couldn't. But there were more, so many more. I trusted her to handle the books while I focused on growing our little coffee shop into something special. "You're the creative one, Lauren," she'd said, laughing over wine just last week. "Let me deal with the boring numbers stuff." The stack of statements spread across the counter told a different story. Designer clothes, first-class flights, five-star hotels, all carefully hidden beneath legitimate business expenses, draining my dream dry one swipe at a time. The bell above the door chimed. "Morning, boss," Desiree called out, hanging up her coat. She must have read something in my face because her smile vanished. "Lauren, what's wrong?" I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up around the betrayal lodged there. Instead, I just pushed the pile of papers toward her. "Oh my God," she whispered, flipping through them. "Oh my God, how much?" "Everything," I managed. She took everything. The morning regulars would start arriving soon. The lawyers from the firm down the block, the nurses getting off night shift, the college students cramming for early classes. They'd want their lattes and scones and that perfect little boost to start their day. They had no idea their favorite neighborhood cafe was drowning in debt. My phone buzzed. Emily's face lit up the screen. A selfie of us from opening day. Champagne glasses raised in celebration. I let it go to voicemail. "Have you called the police?" Desiree asked. I shook my head. She covered her tracks too well, made everything look legitimate. I signed off on reports without checking because I trusted her. My laugh came out bitter as burnt coffee. God, I'm such an idiot. "You're not an idiot. She's your best friend. Was your best friend." Desiree corrected herself. Best friend. The words tasted like ash. Emily and I had met in college, sharing dreams over cheap wine and cheaper ramen. When I'd finally scraped together enough for a down payment on this place, she'd been the first person I called. We'd painted these walls together, argued over chair colors, celebrated every tiny milestone. Now she was gone, along with my savings, my business account, and any chance of keeping this place afloat. The phone buzzed again, this time a text. "Lauren, I can explain everything. Please don't do anything rash. Meet me at Riverside Park at noon. I have a plan to fix this." "Delete it," Desiree said firmly. "Whatever excuse she's got, whatever she's planning, it's not worth hearing." She was right. I knew she was right. But my finger hovered over the message. The morning rush started trickling in. I plastered on a smile, made small talk over steaming milk and grinding beans. Every transaction felt like a mockery. These people believed in my little cafe enough to make it part of their daily routine. Emily had made me break that trust without even knowing it. By 11, my decision was made. I grabbed my coat. "Lauren, don't," Desiree pleaded. "At least let me come with you." "I need to hear her say it," I said. "Need to watch her face when she explains how she could do this to me." "Be careful. People who can betray you once will do it again," I finished. "Yeah, I'm counting on it." The cafe door closed behind me with a cheerful jingle that felt like a lie. Emily thought she was calling me to Riverside Park to manipulate me one last time. She thought she knew exactly how this would play out. My anger, her tears, some elaborate story about circumstances and intentions. But she taught me one valuable lesson. Never show your whole hand at once. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number I'd found buried in those bank statements, the one connected to suspicious transfers and late-night calls. Zane, it's Lauren. We need to talk about Emily Cooper. The game she'd started was about to change, and this time I'd be the one writing the rules. The debt collection notices hit my doorstep like fallen leaves, a steady, suffocating pile of consequences. I'd spent the night sorting through them, each envelope another nail in my cafe's coffin. Credit cards maxed, supplier payments bounced. Even my personal account had been drained to cover the hemorrhaging business expenses. Emily hadn't shown at Riverside Park. Of course she hadn't. My phone lit up. Desiree again. I'd ignored her last 3 calls, but this time I picked up. "I'm outside your apartment," she said before I could speak, "with coffee and those almond croissants you stress eat. Open up." I considered pretending I wasn't home, but the thought of facing another hour alone with these papers made my chest tight. Doors unlocked. Desiree took one look at my living room floor, now a sea of red-stamped notices, and set the coffee down. "Okay, this is intervention time. When's the last time you slept?" "Sleep's not gonna fix this." I grabbed a croissant anyway, the buttery layers dissolving on my tongue. "Did you know she took out a second mortgage on the cafe? Without my knowledge. I don't even know how that's possible." "It's not. That's straight up fraud." "Try proving it. Every document has my signature. Perfect forgeries." I laughed, the sound scratching my throat. She even got my habit of dotting I's with little circles. Desiree settled beside me, her shoulder warm against mine. "What did Zane say?" "That Emily approached him 6 months ago, trying to sell him insider information about my suppliers, recipes, everything. He turned her down, but—" I swallowed hard. "He wasn't the only cafe owner she contacted." That manipulative bit? A sharp knock cut her off. We both froze. "Ms. Wagner?" A man's voice. "This is Nathan Morris from Morris & Banks Collections. We need to discuss your outstanding payments." Desiree squeezed my hand. I squeezed back, neither of us breathing. "We have documentation of multiple missed payments. If you don't address this immediately, we'll be forced to pursue legal action." The threat hung in the air like smoke. After what felt like hours, footsteps retreated down the hallway. "They can't take the cafe," Desiree said fiercely. "We won't let them." "They can, and they will." I pulled out my phone, showing her the latest email. "Unless I come up with $127,000 by the end of the month." Jesus. She grabbed the phone, scrolling through figures that made my head spin. "Have you talked to Matthew? He's got connections in banking. Maybe he could—" "I'm not dragging your brother into this mess." "He'd want to help." "No." The word came out sharper than intended. I can't owe anyone else. Not now." My phone buzzed. An unknown number. The voicemail notification popped up seconds later. "Lauren?" Emily's voice, thick with tears. "Please, I know you hate me right now, but you have to understand. I never meant—" "Things just got out of control. But I can fix this. I have a way to make everything right. Just check your email. Please." Desiree was already shaking her head. "Delete it. Whatever scheme she's cooking up will probably make things worse." I was already opening my laptop. "Yeah, but I need to know what she's planning." The email loaded. A single document attachment. A contract for the sale of Riverside Cafe to a developer planning to demolish the whole block. "The offer's legitimate," I said numbly. 3 times what the cafe is worth. Enough to clear the debt and then some. "It's blood money," Desiree spat. "She drives you into debt, then conveniently has a buyer lined up. She's probably getting a cut." She was right, but the numbers kept swimming before my eyes. A way out, handed to me by the same person who'd pushed me over the edge. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Zane. Need to meet. Found something about Emily you should see. I stood up, brushing croissant crumbs from my lap. I need air, and answers. Lauren, Desiree's voice was careful. Whatever you're thinking of doing, I'm thinking it's time to stop reacting and start acting. I grabbed my coat. Emily wants to play developer? Fine. But first, I need to understand exactly what game she's been running. The collection notice crunched under my feet as I headed for the door. Behind me, Desiree called out, "Just promise me you won't do anything stupid." I didn't answer. After all, stupid would be trusting Emily again. What I had in mind was something much more calculated, and it started with finding out what Zane knew. Zane's cafe was everything mine used to be, bustling, vibrant, alive with possibility. The scent of success hung thick in the air, mingling with artisanal coffee and fresh-baked bread. My stomach clenched as I pushed through the door. He was behind the counter, sleeve tattoos on display as he pulled espresso shots. 10 minutes, he mouthed, gesturing toward an empty table. I sat, fighting the urge to analyze everything: his equipment, his layout, his menu prices. Instead, I watched his customers, trying to ignore the voice in my head calculating how many I'd lost this week alone. Here. A steaming cup appeared in front of me. Your usual, oat milk cappuccino, extra shot. You remember my order? Hard to forget the competition. Zane dropped into the seat across from me, his expression unreadable. Especially when she orders the same thing 3 times a week for months. My hand froze halfway to the cup. Emily came here? Started about 8 months ago. Always during your busy hours, always with her laptop. He slid his phone across the table. Always meeting with this guy. The photo was grainy but clear enough. Emily, head bent close to a man in an expensive suit. Papers spread between them. My chest tightened. I recognized those papers. Our original lease agreement. That's Marcus Reynolds, Zane said. Developer. Been buying up properties all along this strip. The one who made the offer on my cafe. Bingo. He leaned back, arms crossed. Emily's been working with him since before your money troubles started, setting up the perfect distress sale. The cappuccino turned bitter on my tongue. She engineered the whole thing. The theft, the debt. It was all to force me to sell. For pennies on the dollar. Then Reynolds develops the block. Emily gets her commission, and your cafe becomes another overpriced apartment complex. My fingers curled into fists under the table. Why are you telling me this? We're competitors. My failure is your gain. Something flickered across Zane's face. Anger? Hurt? Reynolds approached me too, offered to buy me out for triple market value. But you didn't sell. This place? He gestured around the cafe. It's not just business, it's community, history, something Emily clearly doesn't understand. My phone buzzed. Another text from Emily. The developer needs an answer by Friday. Please, Lauren, this is your best way out. She's wrong, Zane said quietly. There's always another way. Is there? The words came out raw. I'm drowning in debt, hemorrhaging customers, and the only person I trusted. My voice cracked. I looked away, blinking hard. Hey, his hand covered mine, warm and calloused. You've got something Emily never will, people who actually care about this place, your regulars, your staff. Hell, even your grumpy competitor next door. A laugh escaped before I could stop it. Grumpy? I prefer discerningly morose. His grin faded. Look, I've got copies of Emily's meetings, timestamps, everything. It won't undo the damage, but it's evidence of conspiracy. Enough to maybe press charges. Or, an idea started forming, dangerous and tempting. Enough to turn her own game against her. Zane's eyebrows rose. What are you thinking? that Emily's not the only one who can play developer. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through contacts. But I'm going to need help, starting with your evidence and your coffee supplier, the one Emily couldn't convince to work with her. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Lauren, that's playing with fire. Good thing I've got nothing left to burn. I stood up, energy thrumming through my veins. Emily thinks she's got me backed into a corner. Time to show her what that really feels like. Wait. Zane caught my arm as I turned to leave. Whatever you're planning, be careful. Emily's desperate, and desperate people are dangerous, I finished. So am I. She made sure of that. Outside, the street was filling with afternoon crowds. Through Zane's window, I could see him watching me, concern etched on his face. My phone buzzed again, Desiree this time, probably wondering where I'd disappeared to. I ignored it, opening my email instead. Time to send Emily exactly what she was waiting for. You're right. We need to talk. Meet me at the cafe tonight after closing. Just us, like old times. The response came seconds later. Thank you, Lauren. You won't regret this. Oh, but someone would. I just had to make sure it wasn't me. Desiree found me in the cafe's storage room, surrounded by years of receipts and bank statements. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the window, turning paper edges to gold. You missed our check-in call, she said, closing the door behind her. I was worried. I'm fine. I held up a stack of documents. Just doing some forensic accounting. Right, because that's totally normal behavior. She settled onto a crate of coffee beans. Want to tell me what happened with Zane? I told her everything. Emily's conspiracy with the developer, the staged financial collapse, all of it. With each word, the betrayal felt fresher, sharper. That calculating witch. Desiree's voice shook. We have to go to the police. With what? Everything looks legitimate on paper. I gestured at the mess around us. Emily made sure of that. Then, what's your plan? I hesitated. Desiree had been my rock through this nightmare, but what I was considering, maybe it's better if you don't know. Oh, hell no. She grabbed my arm. You don't get to protect me by shutting me out. Not now. Fine. I met her eyes. I'm going to make Emily think she's won. Sign the papers, act desperate and grateful, then use Zane's evidence to prove she orchestrated the whole thing. That's actually not as crazy as I expected. There's more. I pulled out my phone, showing her the email chain with Emily's developer. While she thinks I'm defeated, I'll be negotiating with other developers, creating a bidding war. Once word gets out about the potential rezoning, understanding dawned on Desiree's face. The property value skyrockets, and Emily's careful plan implodes. She loses her commission, her reputation, her freedom, if we can prove fraud. Desiree's expression hardened. But Lauren, this is dangerous. If she realizes what you're doing, she won't. I stood, pacing between towers of storage boxes. Emily thinks she knows me, the trusting friend, the creative dreamer who never checks the books. She has no idea what I'm capable of. That's what scares me. Desiree's voice was quiet. I've never seen you like this. Like what? Strong? Strategic? Cold? The word hit like a slap. I turned to face her, protest rising, but the concern in her eyes stopped me. Emily betrayed me, I said finally. Tried to destroy everything I've built. What am I supposed to do? Forgive her? No, but maybe remember who you are while you're fighting back. She stood, touching my shoulder. The Lauren I know built this place because she wanted to create something beautiful, not destroy someone else. That Lauren was naive. That Lauren was kind. There's a difference. My phone buzzed. Emily, confirming tonight's meeting. The sight of her name made my stomach clench. I have to do this. I said, even if it changes me. Then let me help, whatever you're planning. No. The word came out sharper than intended. I need you clean in case things go wrong. Besides, I managed a smile. Someone has to keep the cafe running while I play developer. Fine. Desiree pulled me into a fierce hug. But promise me something? What? When Emily shows up tonight, remember the friend she used to be. Not because she deserves it, but because you deserve to keep that part of yourself. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Instead, I buried myself back in paperwork, searching for any detail Emily might have missed. Hours later, after Desiree left, I found it, a discrepancy in the timing of transfers, a pattern hidden in plain sight. Emily hadn't been working alone. Someone else had accessed our accounts, someone with banking expertise. My hands shook as I pulled up an old photo on my phone. Emily's birthday last year, all of us celebrating. There in the background, smiling at the camera, Matthew, Desiree's brother, the friend who'd offered to help with my banking troubles. The final piece clicked into place, shattering whatever warmth Desiree's words had stirred. Emily hadn't just betrayed me, she'd built a whole network of deception, using my closest relationships against me. The cafe's front door chimed. Emily's silhouette appeared, right on schedule. Time to show her exactly what her betrayal had created. Emily looked smaller somehow, standing in my cafe's dim evening light. Her designer clothes hung loose, dark circles shadowed her eyes. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered Matthew's face in that photo, and my heart hardened. Lauren. Her voice cracked. Thank you for... Sit down. I gestured to the table where we'd planned this cafe's future together. Let's make this quick. She sank into the chair, hands twisting in her lap. I know you're angry. Angry doesn't begin to cover it. I stayed standing, needing the height advantage. Tell me something, Em. When did you recruit Matthew? Before or after you started draining my accounts? The color drained from her face. What? Don't. I slapped the transfer records on the table. His signature's all over these. The timing, the amounts. It had to be someone with banking experience, someone I trusted. Lauren, please. Was it his idea, the whole developer scheme? Or did you corrupt him like you corrupt everything you touch? It wasn't like that. She stood abruptly, sending her chair scraping back. Matthew was trying to help. Help steal my life's work? Help save it. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You were drowning, Lauren. Too proud to see it, too stubborn to change. The cafe was failing months before I touched those accounts. The words hit like a physical blow. You're lying. Check the books yourself, the real ones, not the pretty fiction you were showing investors. 3 failed health inspections. Supplier costs skyrocketing. Customer numbers dropping every month. Because you were sabotaging me. Because you refused to adapt. She grabbed a napkin, wiping her eyes. Matthew saw it first. Said if we didn't intervene, you'd lose everything. At least this way, you get something out of it. My hands shook as I snatched up the papers. So this was what? Tough love? Betraying me for my own good? The developer's offer is real, more than this place is worth. You could start fresh, do something new. This is my home. The words exploded out of me. Every recipe, every regular, every morning rush. It's not just business. It's who I am. It's who you were. Emily's voice softened. Lauren, look around. Really look. When's the last time this place was full? When's the last time you paid yourself a real salary? You're holding on to a dream that's already dead. I wanted to scream that she was wrong, but memories flickered unbidden. Empty tables during peak hours, bounced checks I'd hidden from staff, sleepless nights calculating how to make rent. The papers are here. Emily pulled out an envelope. Sign tonight and everything's covered. Debt cleared, fresh start guaranteed. Keep fighting. She shrugged. Well, bankruptcy leaves fewer options. My phone buzzed. Zane, got the proof. Ready when you are. One text and I could destroy her, expose the conspiracy, ruin her career, maybe even send her to jail. The plan I'd spent days crafting waited like a loaded gun, but her words echoed, cutting deeper than any betrayal. A dream that's already dead. You're right, I said quietly. Emily blinked. What? About the cafe struggling, about me being too proud to see it. I sank into the chair across from her. But you're wrong about one thing. What's that? That betrayal was your only option. I pulled out my own envelope. These are letters from regulars, staff, even competitors. People willing to invest, to help restructure, to fight for this place. People who believe in what we built here. Lauren, I could destroy you right now, show everyone what you and Matthew did, but then I'd be just like you, someone who destroys things instead of building them. Her hands trembled as she reached for the letters. I pulled them back. I'm not signing the developer's deal. Instead, I'm offering you a choice. A choice? Help me save this place, legitimately this time. Use your connections, your financial skills, everything you turned against me. Help me rebuild, or, I slid Zane's evidence folder across the table. Or I use this, your call. Emily stared at the folder, then at me. In her eyes, I saw the same calculation I'd been wrestling with. Revenge versus redemption. Destruction versus creation. Why would you trust me again? She whispered. I don't. But I trust myself enough to try something different. I stood up. You have until morning to decide. Choose carefully. I left her there, surrounded by the wreckage of our friendship and the possibility of its resurrection. Outside, the night air felt clean, new. My phone buzzed again. Desiree this time. I answered, ready to face whatever came next. Sometimes saving a dream meant letting it change. Morning brought rain and Matthew's unexpected silhouette at my door. He stood there dripping, his banker's suit dark with water, looking nothing like the friend who'd offered financial advice over Sunday brunches. Emily told me what happened, he said. I let the silence stretch, remembering all the times he'd sat at my counter, watching me work while he helped balance my books. How many of those numbers had been lies? Aren't you gonna let me in? Depends. Are you here as my friend or Emily's accomplice? He flinched. Lauren, please, just let me explain. I stepped aside, not trusting myself to speak. He moved past me into the cafe, the familiar scent of his cologne now turning my stomach. The developer called this morning, he said, turning to face me. Emily didn't show up to sign the final paperwork. And? And he's pulling the offer, all of it. Matthew ran a hand through his wet hair. Do you understand what that means? The debt, the mortgage. I understand betrayal just fine. Thanks. Damn it, Lauren, I was trying to help. His composure cracked. You were hemorrhaging money, every month watching you pour more into this place, knowing it was only delaying the inevitable. So you and Emily decided to speed up the process? My laugh felt like broken glass. How generous. We had a plan, a clean exit, money to start fresh. He stepped closer. We can still salvage this. I have other investors. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop pretending this was about helping me. It is. Why can't you see that? Because real help doesn't come with lies. The words burst out of me. Real friends don't conspire behind your back, manipulate your accounts, push you toward failure to force their solution. And what's your solution? He gestured around the empty cafe. More 60-hour weeks? More credit card debt? More pretending everything's fine while you drown? Before I could answer, the door chimed. Zane walked in, stopping short at the tableau before him. Bad time? Perfect time, I said, not taking my eyes off Matthew. Show him. Zane pulled out his phone, playing a recording. Emily's voice filled the space. Once the property value crashes, we'll control the whole block. Lauren never has to know our part in it. Matthew's face went ash gray. Where did you get that? Turns out Emily's not great at checking for security cameras during her coffee meetings. Zane's voice was casual, but his eyes were hard. Got dozens of these. Really interesting stuff about artificial debt creation, forged signatures, market manipulation. You're bluffing. Want to test that theory? I stepped closer. See how your banking career survives a fraud investigation? Lauren. Matthew's voice cracked. Please, everything I did was for my own good. Yeah, I got that part. I moved to the counter, started my morning coffee routine. The familiar motions steadied my hands. Here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna call your banking friends, restructure my debt, legitimately this time. Then you're going to disappear from my life. Or Zane's evidence goes to the FBI. Steam hissed as I pulled a shot of espresso. Your choice. The silence stretched, broken only by the gurgle of brewing coffee and distant rain. You've changed, Matthew said finally. Yeah, funny how betrayal does that. He reached for his phone, fingers trembling slightly as he dialed. The conversation was brief, technical, final. It's done, he said afterward. The terms will be emailed over. Good, now get out. He paused at the door. For what it's worth, I really did care. I know, that's what makes it worse. After he left, Zane leaned against the counter. You okay? No. I pushed a cup toward him. Oat milk cappuccino, extra shot. But I will be. Lauren? He hesitated. Emily's still out there, and now she's desperate. Let her come. I started prepping for opening, the morning routine grounding me. I'm done playing defense. My phone lit up with a text. Emily, you forced my hand. Hope you're ready for what comes next. I showed it to Zane. His expression darkened. She won't stop, he said. No. I squared my shoulders, facing the rain-streaked windows where the first light of dawn was breaking. But neither will I. The morning crowd would arrive soon, seeking their daily comfort in coffee and routine. They'd find something different today. A owner who'd finally stopped trying to please everyone, who'd learned that sometimes saving what you love means fighting for it. Emily wanted war? Fine. I was just getting started. The cafe windows rattled as thunder rolled overhead. I stood behind my counter, watching Emily through the rain-streaked glass. She wasn't alone. 4 men in suits, Zane murmured from beside me. Developer's muscle, probably. Probably. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. You should go. Like hell. The door chimed. Emily entered first, rain darkening her designer blazer. The men filed in behind her, expensive suits, blank expressions. One carried a briefcase. Closing time, I called out. We're done for the day. Oh, we're just getting started. Emily's smile was razor sharp. The developer's lawyers have some papers for you to sign. Not interested. This isn't a negotiation, Lauren. She nodded to Briefcase Man, who began spreading documents across my favorite corner table. Your debt restructuring fell through. Funny how quickly banks change their minds when certain irregularities come to light. My hands clenched on the counter. Matthew, of course, his final betrayal. Sign now, Emily continued, and you might salvage enough to start over. Refuse? She shrugged. Well, bankruptcy's such an ugly process. Lightning flashed, casting harsh shadows across her face. In that moment, I barely recognized the woman who'd once been my best friend. You know what's funny? I moved around the counter slowly. I spent days plotting revenge, planning how to hurt you like you hurt me. But standing here now, I gestured around the cafe, my cafe, with its mismatched mugs and worn wooden tables. I just feel sorry for you. Emily's smile faltered. Excuse me? You've never built anything real, never created something from nothing, poured your soul into it, watched it grow. I traced my fingers along a table's edge, remembering countless mornings of coffee and dreams shared here. You only know how to take. I know how to survive, she snapped. Something you never learned. No? I reached under the counter, pulled out a thick folder. These are letters from customers, neighbors, other business owners, people pledging support, investments, time. While you were plotting to destroy this place, I was building an army to save it. Cute, but sentiment doesn't pay bills. No, but community investment does. I met her eyes. The cafe's going co-op. 51% owned by the neighborhood, 49% mine. Papers were filed this morning. The color drained from Emily's face. You're lying. Check your phone. The press release should be hitting right about now. On cue, her phone buzzed. She grabbed it, fingers shaking slightly as she read. The suited men shifted uncomfortably. This changes nothing, she said, but her voice wavered. The developer can't touch a community-owned business without public hearings, months of red tape, bad publicity. Zane stepped forward, arms crossed. Really bad publicity. Once those recordings of your conspiracy go public, you wouldn't. Try me. I moved closer, close enough to smell her expensive perfume. You taught me well, Em. Sometimes you have to be willing to burn it all down. Thunder crashed again. In the silence that followed, I heard her breathing quicken. I could fight this, she whispered. You could, but you won't. I softened my voice, because deep down, under all the schemes and betrayals, some part of you remembers who we used to be, what this place meant to both of us. Tears welled in her eyes. Lauren, go home, Emily. It's over. She stared at me for a long moment, something like regret flickering across her face. Then she turned to the suited men. We're done here. They filed out silently, taking their threatening papers with them. Emily paused at the door, rain drumming against the glass behind her. I really did love this place once, she said softly. I know. That's what made it hurt so much. After they left, Zane let out a long breath. Holy shit, you actually did it. We did it. I sagged against the counter, adrenaline draining away. I couldn't have pulled this off without you. Please, this was all you. He bumped my shoulder gently. The Lauren I first met would never have thought of a co-op solution. The Lauren you first met was naive. The Lauren I'm looking at now is unstoppable. Outside, the storm was breaking up, hints of sunset peeking through clouds. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, restructuring, renovations, rebuilding trust. But for now, standing in my cafe with the taste of victory sweet on my tongue, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Peace. I started making coffee. 2 cappuccinos, extra shots. Some traditions were worth keeping. Some dreams were worth fighting for. The morning rush flowed around me like a river, familiar and strange all at once. Every surface gleamed, fresh paint brightening the walls while keeping their character. The new espresso machine hummed efficiently beside my old faithful one. Progress and tradition, side by side. 2 oat milk lattes for Sarah, Desiree called out, her voice carrying over the buzz of conversation. I watched Sarah, a regular since our first week, grab her drinks from the pickup counter. She paused, taking in the subtle changes. Local art on the walls, the expanded seating area, the community board filled with neighborhood events. It feels the same, she said, catching my eye. But better somehow? That's the idea. The bell chimed. Zane walked in, carrying a box that smelled of freshly baked sourdough. Our weekly bread exchange, his artisanal loaves for my cold brew concentrate, had survived the chaos, evolved into something stronger. Packed house, he noted, sliding the box onto the counter. Always is now. I poured him his usual cappuccino. Funny how community ownership makes people feel invested. Funny how having the right person in charge makes that possible. Heat crept into my cheeks. Before I could respond, Desiree appeared at my elbow. Speaking of being in charge, she handed me an envelope. This came by courier. My name was written in familiar handwriting, Emily's. You don't have to open it, Desiree said quietly. But I did. Some doors needed proper closing. Inside was a single page, a letter of resignation from her position at the development firm, copied to me. And a note. You were right about building things, about creating instead of taking. I'm starting over somewhere new, not asking forgiveness, just wanted you to know. P.S. Check the storage room's loose floorboard. Left something there years ago you should have. Everything okay? Zane asked. Yeah. I tucked the letter away. Watch the front for a minute. The storage room smelled of coffee beans and possibility. I found the loose board easily. How had I never noticed it before? Underneath lay a small notebook, its pages yellow with age, our original business plan. Emily's neat handwriting alongside my messy scrawls, dreams sketched out in coffee-stained margins, and tucked inside a photo, 2 college girls raising champagne glasses, eyes bright with possibility. Found this too. Desiree's voice made me jump. She held up a stack of papers, bank statements, transfer records, hidden behind the cleaning supplies, everything we needed to prove what she and Matthew did. She left us ammunition, I realized, insurance in case her plan failed, or proof she wasn't completely lost. Desiree sat beside me. What are you going to do with it? I looked at the evidence of betrayal, then at the notebook full of shared dreams. Both felt like artifacts from another life. I stood, carrying everything to the industrial sink. The water ran clear and cold as pages dissolved, ink bleeding away, old wounds washing clean. When I returned to the front, the morning rush was easing. Zane had jumped in to help, moving behind the counter like he belonged there. In a way, he did. We all did. Every person who'd chosen to invest in this place, to fight for it, to make it stronger. Hey, he caught my hand as I passed. You good? Better than good. I squeezed his fingers, then let go. Orders needed making. Coffee needed brewing. Life moved forward. I know who I am now. The cafe hummed with energy. Regulars chatting with new faces. Local artists discussing their next showcase. Baristas calling out drinks like poetry. My dream, transformed but not broken. Stronger for being shared. I pulled a perfect shot of espresso, watching the crema swirl like possibilities. The bittersweet scent rose up, familiar as breathing. Some people spend their lives taking things apart. Others learn to build something beautiful from the pieces. I chose to build. The morning sun streamed through our windows, catching on the new sign we'd hung yesterday. Below the cafe's name, smaller letters spelled out our promise to the community. Built together, growing stronger. I smiled, reaching for another cup. There were drinks to make, stories to hear, moments to create. This was just the beginning.
When my father passed away, he left me the family house. But after his death, my mother moved me out to live with her new family. At just 7 years old, I was deeply affected by the loss of my dad, with whom I shared many precious memories. The situation worsened when my mother quickly introduced a new man into our lives, insisting I call him Dad shortly after my father's death. This didn't sit well with me at all. As my mother and her new husband prepared for their wedding, which was notably elaborate for a second marriage, they made the decision to move me to my grandparents' house permanently. My mother left for her honeymoon and did not return for me, instead eventually showing up just to leave my belongings there, effectively abandoning me with my grandparents. Despite her occasional visits claiming love and concern, the real reason became clear later on. She needed my room for her stepchildren from her new husband, John. Growing up with my grandparents, who were truly my saviours, I managed to lead a happy life despite the circumstances. After graduating high school and spending a year working in product marketing manager, I decided to start my own business, which meant I needed capital. It was then that I planned to lease out my inherited home, the very house my mother and her new family were living in. Unbeknownst to them, my father had left the house solely to me in his will. His last-minute decision had clearly been a shock to my mother, indicated by her reaction during the reading of the will. At 27, feeling both legal and moral ownership over my childhood home, I decided it was time to reclaim it. Facing resistance and threats from my mother's family, I involved the police to assert my rights. This action marked a significant step in taking back what was rightfully mine, not just for financial reasons, but as a final assertion of my father's wishes. Over time, I learned that my mother had made multiple attempts to contest my father's will, but was unsuccessful each time. My father had crafted the will with such precision that the house was unequivocally left to me, with the condition that I could only sell it after reaching the age of 26. Before then, the property was to remain untouched. My grandparents believed that my father had anticipated my mother's intentions, which is why he had established such a firm will to prevent any potential manipulation during my childhood. Recently, I decided to generate some income by leasing the house. I tried to discuss this plan with my mother, but she did not respond to my calls. During a visit with my grandparents, I shared my intentions, only to be met with a strange reaction. They warned me that my mother and her new family might resist vacating the house, especially since her stepdaughter was expecting a child with a teenage boy who had abandoned his responsibilities. Additionally, John, her husband, had been laid off and was only able to find part-time work. This left them in a precarious financial state. Feeling uncertain about how to proceed, I considered the fact that I too needed the house, now that I had quit my job to start my own business. My grandparents explained that my mother and her family were struggling, which might make them reluctant to leave my property. Initially, I thought about giving them a month's notice, but given their circumstances, I opted to extend it to 4 0R5 months. Since my mother was unresponsive over the phone, I decided to visit her in person. The house had changed, and so had she. Both exuded a chilly aura. Her reaction to my arrival was lukewarm at best, offering a forced smile and a tepid hug. This was our first meeting in nearly 10 years. She had stopped visiting after I became a teenager, and our relationship had soured. Despite the years apart, she showed no interest in catching up or inquiring about my life. It seemed she only cared because my visit suggested an urgent matter. I played it down, saying I just wanted to check in after such a long time. Following a brief and awkward silence, I left, feeling distinctly unwelcome. Even my pregnant stepsister seemed to regard me with suspicion, as though I was there to cause trouble. For the moment, I shaped the idea of reclaiming the house and looked for alternative ways to fund my business. However, my mother's behaviour reached a new low last week, on the 19th anniversary of my father's death. My grandparents organised a small prayer ceremony at the church, and since I was in town, I decided to honour my father by feeding the poor and giving gifts to underprivileged children. I invited friends and family, including my mother, but she ignored the invitation. When I checked the email trail, I discovered my first attempt to reach out to my mother via email had seemingly failed. She hadn't even opened the message. Concerned it might have landed in her spam folder, I decided to visit her home once more. This time, however, she wasn't there. My stepsister Mia answered the door with no pleasantries, immediately confronting me with, "You're back again? What's the matter?" I explained that I had come to personally invite our mother to a prayer ceremony for my late father. Mia dismissively laughed and said, "That was ages ago, get over it." Taken aback by her rudeness, I retorted, "Excuse me, he was my dad. It's not your place to make such comments." She just rolled her eyes and disappeared into her room. Feeling foolish for even trying, I left a note on the table asking my mother to call me. She did call the next day, but when I spoke about the prayer ceremony, she quickly dismissed the idea, claiming she had to take Mia for a checkup. Her outright refusal, without even a pretense of willingness to attend, stung. I sarcastically responded, "Sure, they're your priority. We mean nothing to you. Good luck with raising that narcissistic woman and her child." Her outrage at my words was swift. She defended Mia and criticized me for being insensitive, especially in front of a pregnant woman. She then insulted my father, claiming I was just like him. Losing my temper, I countered that she had no right to malign my father. She coldly mentioned that he had been gone for 19 years and suggested I move on. Infuriated, I ended the call abruptly, saying that my father wouldn't have appreciated her prayers anyway after seeing her true nature. The same day, I decided enough was enough and contacted a lawyer to begin the eviction process from the house my father had left me. It took the lawyer about 3 weeks to confirm the details of my father's will and send an eviction notice to my mother. She was shocked, clearly not expecting me to take such drastic measures over her failure to attend the ceremony. She tried to reach me, but finding herself blocked, she turned up at my grandparents' home instead. By then, I had moved back in with my grandparents to sort out my life. My mother tried to persuade them to intervene on her behalf regarding the eviction notice. Despite their gentle nature, my grandparents stood firm, explaining that the decision was mine alone and that they had no influence over it. Her frustration was evident as she accused them of spoiling me, leaving us all astounded by her audacity. It was clear that, despite everything, the situation had escalated far beyond what any of us could have anticipated. I confided in my grandma about my frustration that she hadn't confronted my manipulative mum. My grandparents explained they preferred not to engage with such a toxic person. I, however, was determined not to let my mother and her family stay in my house any longer than necessary. I issued an eviction notice according to the tenant laws of the country. Technically, they weren't even tenants, since they never paid rent, while I was stuck paying the property taxes each year. My grandparents, being deeply religious and compassionate, urged me to reconsider for the sake of decency and the unborn child in the household. They persuaded me to give them a month to find alternative housing, despite my readiness to evict them immediately. I begrudgingly agreed, respecting their wishes, even though my stepsister had proven just as unpleasant as my mother. The next day, my mother called, but I ignored it, remembering all the time she had ignored me. She messaged me, urgently wanting to talk. I coldly suggested she check my schedule and meet me when I was available at my grandparents' place. She didn't appreciate my formal tone and sent a lengthy reply accusing me of being overbearing. I didn't bother to respond, making it clear I wasn't going to succumb to her pressure tactics. Throughout my childhood, whenever I showed emotion or frustration, her approach was to scold rather than to comfort, teaching me to suppress my feelings to keep the peace. Now, it was her turn to experience frustration, except she wouldn't have the comfort of a familiar home to retreat to soon. When she came to meet me, I deliberately kept her waiting to unsettle her. My grandparents stayed out of the confrontation. When we finally met, she tried to maintain a stoic demeanour, stating we needed to resolve this quickly as she had other important things to do. I sarcastically noted that finding a new home must indeed be challenging. She angrily questioned the eviction notice, to which I retorted that it was clearly written in English, implying she should be able to understand it without my help. Infuriated, she threw the notice at me, refusing to leave the house and threatening legal action. I remained calm, challenging her to face the legal consequences if she chose to ignore the court order. Her audacity peaked when she referred to my father as her husband, despite having dismissed his memory so callously before. I couldn't hold back my anger and told her she didn't deserve to live in his house after neglecting his legacy so blatantly. She warned that she would get her lawyer involved. I laughed it off, reminding her we still had 10 days until the eviction deadline, curious what she would attempt next. The eviction process was fraught with tension. She tried to manipulate the situation, but I firmly shut down her attempts. In a desperate move, her stepdaughter Mia even threatened to file a harassment claim against me, using her pregnancy as leverage. I made it clear that her condition did not give her the right to cause trouble or evade responsibility. Living with my grandparents, I had installed cameras around the house for security. This came in handy when Mia, my stepsister, tried to confront me again. I firmly told her that if she stepped on the property without permission, I would have her arrested. My mother then came to Mia's defense, accusing me of mentally abusing and torturing her pregnant daughter and threatening to sue me. I confidently referred to the camera footage and suggested we let a judge decide. My mother's tactics then shifted from aggression to self-pity. She began to cry, questioning what she had done wrong in raising me that I had become so self-centered. She even blamed my deceased father, claiming his early death was why I hadn't been brought up properly. I stopped her there, correcting her that I was raised by my grandparents, not her, and they had done a fantastic job. I pointed out the irony in her self-pity, noting how poorly she had raised her own stepdaughter. In the heat of the moment, I mentioned Mia's teenage pregnancy, an outburst I immediately regretted, but by then, her fury was palpable. After calming down, I made it clear that I no longer wished to engage in pointless discussions. I simply wanted my property back. I explained that I had quit my job to start a business and needed to lease the house for income. She became upset at the notion of strangers living there, even though they would be paying tenants. I countered that she could stay if she paid rent, which only increased her agitation. She accused me of prioritizing money over family, to which I replied that there was no family in our relationship. She had neglected me during every important moment of my life, making her rare appearances feel more obligatory than genuine. She attempted every manipulation tactic, gaslighting, guilt-tripping, anger, but I was unmoved. Contrary to what others might think, this did not lead to her vacating the house. Her husband then became involved, sending me a threatening voicemail bragging about his physical strength and warning me against pursuing the eviction. I took his voicemail as a direct threat and didn't engage further, preferring to let law enforcement handle it. On the eviction day, I went to the police station with my lawyer to report the threats and request an escort for the eviction. Initially, the police were hesitant, suggesting they'd come only if there was trouble, but a little persuasion and they agreed to accompany us. When we arrived, my mother, John and Mia started cursing at us. John even came out wielding a hockey stick, but he retreated when he saw the police car. The cops presented the eviction notice and ordered them to leave. Confidently, they asked for another month to pack up and leave, but after all the threats and disrespect, I was firm in my decision. When they tried to use Mia's pregnancy to gain sympathy and a few extra days, I insisted on a strict time frame of 5 hours. This decision might have seemed harsh to the observing officers, but I was determined to follow through legally, without bending to emotional blackmail. John's last-ditch effort to intimidate us fizzled out in the presence of the police, marking the end of their resistance. After the tense eviction, the police demanded that the keys be handed over at the station, where I would later pick them up. We compensated the officers for their extra help, a price I was more than willing to pay to avoid any further confrontation with my former house occupants. My lawyer recommended obtaining a restraining order against them to prevent any potential harassment towards me or any future tenants, given their track record of disruptive behaviour. The police issued the restraining order, clearly explaining the legal ramifications should they choose to violate it. Their dismay was evident, and with that, I finally regained control over my property. I've since put the house up for lease, eager to secure a good tenant and begin funding my new business venture. I had just turned 19 a few days ago, a milestone that should have been celebrated with joy and laughter. However, my parents abruptly cancelled my birthday party at the last moment. The reason? My older sister, who was supposed to have left for a trip to New York with her friends, found herself stranded due to severe storms that grounded flights in the Midwest. Upset about her delayed plans, she demanded that my birthday celebration be scrapped. If she couldn't enjoy her trip, then no celebration should happen at all. Regrettably, my parents obliged without second thought, prioritising her feelings over mine. Initially, I was excited for the party, especially since my sister wasn't supposed to be around. Yet, just as luck would have it, she ended up at home, and her frustration over her cancelled plans loomed large. My parents, always cautious to keep the peace, chose to cancel my party rather than risk upsetting her further. They went as far as to inform all my invited guests of the cancellation, citing that I was ill and needed rest, instructing them not to contact me so as not to disturb my supposed recovery. When the day of my supposed celebration arrived, I waited eagerly for guests who never came. It was only later in the evening, after questioning my parents, that I learned of the cancellation. The revelation was a breaking point for me. The injustice of it all, the preferential treatment my sister consistently received, and the expectation for me to always step aside, overwhelmed me. In the heat of the moment, my frustration boiled over into an argument with my parents, voicing years of pent-up feelings of being sidelined in favour of my sister. The argument escalated when my sister intervened, defending our parents' decision and calling me spoiled and entitled for wanting to celebrate amidst her disappointment. This accusation was the last straw, leading to a physical altercation that was interrupted by the unexpected arrival of our grandfather. My grandfather, a respected figure within the family, was immediately concerned by the chaos he walked into. After quickly assessing the situation, he was appalled by the unfairness shown towards me. In a decisive move, he invited me to move in with him. As a gesture of support, he also chose to cut off financial assistance to my parents, revealing in the process that they had long harboured a preference for my sister over me. This shift not only provided me with a sense of validation, but also marked a new beginning, free from the inequities of my family dynamics. The move was not just about finding a new place to live. It was about claiming a space where I was valued and my milestones celebrated, away from the overshadowing presence of my sister. During a particularly heated moment, I found myself explaining everything to my grandfather. I had often kept quiet about how I was treated at home, not wanting to seem petty, but the constant favouritism towards my sister had grown unbearable. It seemed pointless to keep quiet any longer. Silence had only encouraged more of the same treatment. With nothing left to lose, I shared how this wasn't just an isolated incident, but a daily reality for me over the past 19 years. As I spoke, my grandfather's expression shifted from concern to shock and then to anger. He confronted my dad, revealing something I had never known. My grandparents had been financially supporting our family for years because my parents' business was struggling. This support included funding for the very birthday party that was cancelled. My grandfather was deeply disappointed that they had used his support to favour my sister repeatedly, instead of treating us equally. My sister tried to justify her actions by explaining her disappointment over her cancelled trip to New York, but her excuses fell on deaf ears. My grandfather dismissed her reasoning outright, labelling her demands as pure entitlement. The argument escalated quickly, and my grandfather announced he would no longer financially support my parents. He then turned to me, offering me a place to live with him, a way out of the toxic environment at home. The stark contrast between my parents' reaction to losing financial support and their indifference to me moving out confirmed my grandfather's suspicions. They really didn't prioritize my well-being as much as they should have. Without hesitation, I began packing. While my parents tried to persuade my grandfather to reconsider his decision, I gathered my belongings. My departure was swift. My grandfather and I left without looking back. As we drove to his house, he apologized for not intervening sooner, regretting that it took this long to take action. Since moving in with my grandfather, my life has been significantly more peaceful. Meanwhile, my parents have been trying to contact me, sending messages full of apologies and excuses, claiming they hadn't realized how unfairly they had treated me. I had just turned 19 a few days ago, a milestone that should have been celebrated with joy and laughter. However, my parents abruptly cancelled my birthday party at the last moment. The reason? My older sister, who was supposed to have left for a trip to New York with her friends, found herself stranded due to severe storms that grounded flights in the Midwest. Upset about her delayed plans, she demanded that my birthday celebration be scrapped. If she couldn't enjoy her trip, then no celebration should happen at all. Regrettably, my parents obliged without second thought, prioritizing her feelings over mine. Initially, I was excited for the party, especially since my sister wasn't supposed to be around. Yet, just as luck would have it, she ended up at home, and her frustration over her cancelled plans loomed large. My parents, always cautious to keep the peace, chose to cancel my party rather than risk upsetting her further. They went as far as to inform all my invited guests of the cancellation, citing that I was ill and needed rest, instructing them not to contact me so as not to disturb my supposed recovery. When the day of my supposed celebration arrived, I waited eagerly for guests who never came. It was only later in the evening, after questioning my parents, that I learned of the cancellation. The revelation was a breaking point for me. The injustice of it all, the preferential treatment my sister consistently received, and the expectation for me to always step aside overwhelmed me. In the heat of the moment, my frustration boiled over into an argument with my parents, voicing years of pent-up feelings of being sidelined in favour of my sister. The argument escalated when my sister intervened, defending our parents' decision and calling me spoiled and entitled for wanting to celebrate amidst her disappointment. This accusation was the last straw, leading to a physical altercation that was interrupted by the unexpected arrival of our grandfather. My grandfather, a respected figure within the family, was immediately concerned by the chaos he walked into. After quickly assessing the situation, he was appalled by the unfairness shown towards me. In a decisive move, he invited me to move in with him. As a gesture of support, he also chose to cut off financial assistance to my parents, revealing in the process that they had long harboured a preference for my sister over me. This shift not only provided me with a sense of validation, but also marked a new beginning, free from the inequities of my family dynamics. The move was not just about finding a new place to live. It was about claiming a space where I was valued and my milestones celebrated, away from the overshadowing presence of my sister. During a particularly heated moment, I found myself explaining everything to my grandfather. I had often kept quiet about how I was treated at home, not wanting to seem petty, but the constant favouritism towards my sister had grown unbearable. It seemed pointless to keep quiet any longer. Silence had only encouraged more of the same treatment. With nothing left to lose, I shared how this wasn't just an isolated incident, but a daily reality for me over the past 19 years. As I spoke, my grandfather's expression shifted from concern to shock and then to anger. He confronted my dad, revealing something I had never known. My grandparents had been financially supporting our family for years because my parents' business was struggling. This support included funding for the very birthday party that was cancelled. My grandfather was deeply disappointed that they had used his support to favour my sister repeatedly, instead of treating us equally. My sister tried to justify her actions by explaining her disappointment over her cancelled trip to New York, but her excuses fell on deaf ears. My grandfather dismissed her reasoning outright, labelling her demands as pure entitlement. The argument escalated quickly, and my grandfather announced he would no longer financially support my parents. He then turned to me, offering me a place to live with him, a way out of the toxic environment at home. The stark contrast between my parents' reaction to losing financial support and their indifference to me moving out confirmed my grandfather's suspicions. They really didn't prioritize my well-being as much as they should have. Without hesitation, I began packing. While my parents tried to persuade my grandfather to reconsider his decision, I gathered my belongings. My departure was swift. My grandfather and I left without looking back. As we drove to his house, he apologized for not intervening sooner, regretting that it took this long to take action. Since moving in with my grandfather, my life has been significantly more peaceful. Meanwhile, my parents have been trying to contact me, sending messages full of apologies and excuses, claiming they hadn't realized how unfairly they had treated me. They punished me for years over circumstances entirely beyond my control. Although I'm somewhat upset with my grandfather for not disclosing these painful truths sooner, I understand the difficulty in sharing such heavy burdens, especially with someone still growing up. He's the only family I feel I can truly rely on now, and I'm trying not to hold my resentment against him. It's been over a week since I moved in with my grandfather, and during this time, my parents have repeatedly texted me, trying to persuade me to drop my condition. I haven't responded, waiting instead for them to make a genuine decision. Their attempts at contact stopped a few days ago, and I thought they had finally resigned themselves to my terms. However, just today, as I was leaving school, I saw my sister waiting for me outside, which unsettled me. To ensure my safety, I asked a friend from the football team to walk me home. He's quite robust, and I knew he'd protect me if my sister had any confrontation in mind. He's been a reliable friend, and right now, I value his protective presence more than ever. I've known my friend from the football team for a long time, and I trust him completely. He's well informed about all the family issues I've faced, so when I needed someone to walk me home because my sister was unsettlingly following us, he didn't hesitate to accompany me. Halfway home, my sister's silent pursuit got to me, and I decided to confront her to understand her intentions. She hesitated to speak in front of my friend, claiming she wanted a private conversation, but I was clear that I wasn't interested in discussing anything with her alone. Despite this, she started blaming me for our parents' stress and unhappiness, claiming they were upset because of my decision not to return home or help them financially unless she moved out. She accused me of being unfair for setting such a condition. I found her attempt to guilt me into changing my mind laughable. Her logic reminded me of the very reason my birthday party was cancelled, because she couldn't have her way. She didn't want me to have mine either. So, I echoed her reasoning back to her. If I couldn't be happy, neither could she. As I turned to leave, she lost her temper and shouted insults at me, calling me a horrible person. I ignored her and continued walking, but she escalated things by physically attacking me. Luckily, my friend was there to intervene quickly. He pulled her off me before anything more serious could happen. After I regained my footing, I confronted her directly. I was furious that she thought she could attack me without consequences. In the heat of the moment, I slapped her and warned her that any further aggression would lead me to involve the police. Considering all the trouble she had already caused, I doubted our parents would appreciate more drama. She tried to argue further, but seeing that I was resolute and protected, she didn't pursue me any further after that confrontation. My friend and I walked away, leaving her behind, a clear line drawn. This incident reinforced my decision to maintain my distance from a home environment that had become too toxic and manipulative. When I got back home after the confrontation with my sister, I shared the whole incident with my grandfather. He was initially so concerned that he wanted to call the police, but I convinced him it wasn't necessary. I reassured him that my sister probably learned her lesson this time, especially given her precarious standing with our parents. I also took that moment to fill him in on the condition I had set for my parents, if they wanted me to consider returning home. To my surprise, Instead of being upset, my grandfather found the whole situation amusing and clever. He wholeheartedly agreed that my parents needed a bit of shaking up to truly understand the impact of their actions. Though I was a bit sore from the scuffle, there was a part of me that felt relieved and somewhat justified. For too long, my sister had pushed me around, and standing up to her felt like a long overdue turning of the tables. Now, I hoped that this whole ordeal would serve as a lesson for her and my parents to finally start respecting my boundaries. Nearly a month has passed since I moved out, and with high school officially over, I am gearing up to start college in September. I'll only be with my grandfather for a few more months. I had my high school graduation recently, and my prom date was the same football player friend I mentioned earlier. Turns out, some of you guessed right about us. Shortly after my altercation with my sister, my parents reached out with a message. They had decided to let my sister stay with them, and branding me as jealous and petty. They admitted that their only reason for wanting me back was to continue receiving financial support from my grandfather. However, they mentioned that my uncle had stepped in to invest in their business, so they no longer needed that support from my grandpa, nor did they want me around. Honestly, their message didn't impact me as much as they might have hoped. I already knew their intentions, and this confirmation didn't hurt, but rather affirmed my decision to stay away. I didn't even bother responding to their message. It seems my silence irked them, because they sent another message a few hours later threatening to block me, calling me horrible, violent, and ungrateful. They accused me of being violent for slapping my sister in self-defense and ungrateful for not appreciating their parenting. Despite their harsh words and accusations, I felt a deep sense of peace with my choice. Living with my grandfather has given me a fresh perspective on what it means to be supported and valued. As I look forward to starting a new chapter in college, I'm more resolved than ever to maintain my distance from the negativity and continue building a life surrounded by those who genuinely care about me. After the confrontation with my sister, when I told my parents about my decision to keep my distance unless she moved out, they tried to guilt trip me. They mentioned all they had done for me, raising me, feeding me, sending me to school, and providing me with clothes. They seemed to think these basic responsibilities were extraordinary, maybe even enough to earn them a saviour status in my eyes. I find it baffling when parents list these essentials as if they are favours rather than what should be expected. But I guess to my parents, the bare minimum was supposed to feel like a grand gesture. I considered responding to them to point out how absurd this was, but I realised it would be a waste of my energy. Instead of letting them have the last word, I blocked them before they could do the same to me. Now, it's just my grandpa and me, and we've been getting along really well. I've been accepted into several colleges of my choice, and we're waiting to hear back from a few more. My grandpa has promised to cover all my expenses, fulfilling his earlier promise. Adapting to living together has been a process, and occasionally I find myself frustrated that he didn't remove me from my parents' care sooner. However, I recognise that he had his own reasons and challenges, and he regrets not being able to help me earlier. We're working through these issues together, strengthening our bond, and ensuring that I never have to face my parents alone again. Life has been really positive. Interestingly, most of my dad's side of the family has cut ties with my parents and sister after learning about my situation, which was something my grandpa helped reveal. It turns out that not many people knew how I was being treated until my grandpa shared our story. Now, my parents are somewhat ostracised, a situation of their own making. I guess that's karma. As for my sister, I've heard she finally moved out and is living on her own, which is good news for her independence. As for me, my relationship with my boyfriend, the football player, is stronger than ever. We see each other every weekend since my college is close enough to home for regular visits. College life has been a blast. I've made plenty of new friends and really started to come into my own. My grandpa and I have also worked on our relationship, and I can honestly say he's my favourite person in the world. Despite past mistakes, we've forgiven each other and moved on. Growing up, my parents clearly showed a preference for my brother, whom they regarded as the golden child. Despite my own aspirations and efforts, they never hesitated to remind me of how much better he was doing, especially in academics. My brother, 4 years my senior, not only excelled in school, but also quickly climbed the corporate ladder, becoming the youngest president at his company shortly after graduation. I, on the other hand, had different ambitions. While my brother thrived in his 10-to-9 role, I dreamed of business developmentship. My passion was to start my own business designing modern, edgy car accessories, a plan I was deeply committed to after years of research and preparation. About 3 years ago, I decided it was time to take the leap. Despite my parents' overt favoritism, I believed they would still support me. I approached them after celebrating my brother's latest career milestone, hoping for encouragement. Instead, they laughed off my business plan, calling it a joke and openly doubting my capabilities. They insisted I stick to my current job to avoid embarrassing them and being seen as a failure compared to my brother. Hurt but undeterred, I stood my ground, declaring my intention to pursue my dream with or without their backing. They responded harshly, threatening to disown me if I proceeded, claiming they couldn't bear the embarrassment of having one son as a president and the other a struggling business development. I moved forward regardless, determined to succeed on my own terms. Now, 2 years later, my business has flourished beyond expectations. Meanwhile, my brother recently lost his job. Out of the blue, my parents have reconnected, asking me to help him out by offering him a position in my company. At 27, I find myself contemplating this request. My parents, having not spoken to me for years due to their disapproval, are now seeking a favour because of their current predicament. It's a complicated situation, given our strained history and their sudden change of heart, driven by necessity rather than genuine reconciliation. At one point, I realised I had to make a tough decision, either embarrass myself or cut ties with certain people in my life. I chose the latter. I stopped communicating with a family member who, despite everything, sided with our parents over me. His arrogance had always been off-putting, and I felt no connection from the start. My career began in the automotive industry, sparking a business idea that I believed in deeply. Despite my parents' doubts, I decided to take a bold step. Quitting my job, I plunged into establishing my own venture. It was a gamble, not something I'd recommend lightly, but it paid off. Soon, investors were on board, and my business started to grow. Initially, times were tough. I barely made ends meet and depended solely on word of mouth to attract customers. However, about 1.5 years later, the business began to gain traction. Today, I live comfortably in a nice apartment in a lovely neighbourhood and drive a car I'm proud of. I'm not a millionaire, but I'm successful enough to prove my parents wrong, which brings me a great deal of satisfaction. Over the past 3 years, I have not reached out to my family, despite numerous life milestones, including marrying my long-term girlfriend and recently learning we're expecting a child. My extended family keeps me informed about my parents, who often inquire about me but never initiate contact. However, last week they finally asked to meet. After discussing it with my wife, I decided to visit them. They received me warmly, which was a change from the past. We engaged in light conversation before they acknowledged my business success, offering congratulations but no apologies. Then, the topic shifted to my brother John, whose career had taken a downturn following layoffs at his company. This left him jobless and despondent, struggling to find a new path. While I was sympathetic, there was little I could do to help John, making the conversation somewhat awkward. Nonetheless, I listened as my parents explained his situation, wondering what the future might hold for all of us. I was curious to see where my parents were going with the conversation when they finally revealed their true intentions. They asked if I would consider hiring my brother, who was currently struggling with depression and unable to apply for jobs. The job offers he did receive were below his expected salary, so he was in a tough spot. My parents thought a position at my company where he could use his expertise and earn a decent salary might help him. I was caught off guard by their request and told them I needed time to think it over. I purposefully didn't give an immediate answer because I was unsure how to respond. I had a suspicion they weren't reaching out without an ulterior motive, given they had many chances to contact me before but hadn't. They seemed confident I would agree, but after returning home and discussing it with my wife, I decided against it. My wife, who works in banking and isn't involved in my business, advised that I should make professional decisions based on what would work best for the company. She also felt my parents' attempt at reconciliation wasn't genuine. I didn't owe my brother a job and I hadn't promised to help, so I chose not to follow through with their request. I avoided telling them my decision initially, knowing they might try to paint me as the villain. When my parents started messaging me daily and finally called to demand an answer, I told them that after much thought, I couldn't work well with John. Our relationship had never been strong, and I didn't see a duty to hire him based on familial obligation alone. Their reaction was explosive. They accused me of being ungrateful, reminding me of all they had done for me during my childhood, like raising me and providing for my needs. They expected me to return the favour now by helping John. I found this unfair, as their parental duties were basic responsibilities, not favours. Furthermore, they hadn't supported or believed in my business venture initially, so their sudden demands felt unjust. The argument escalated quickly. They accused me of holding on to past grudges and being petty, despite their belief that I should have moved on after all these years. They claimed they would have supported me if my business had failed, and that I should do the same for John. The confrontation became too heated, and I eventually hung up and blocked their numbers. Since then, I've been conflicted, especially with their claims that they would have helped me if roles were reversed. I've discussed this with my wife, and she believes they were manipulating the situation. The entire ordeal has left me feeling confused about my feelings and questioning the nature of familial obligations and support. I felt conflicted because of the manipulation tactics my parents were using, trying to guilt me into hiring my brother John. They hadn't even apologised for their past behaviours, yet they expected me to help him out. John had never been kind to me growing up. He was part of the group that constantly picked on me. My wife reminded me that this was all manipulation, and I shouldn't fall for it. However, I couldn't shake off this nagging feeling of guilt, feeling uneasy about refusing to hire John after he lost his corporate job. It's been a while since I last spoke to my parents, and I've realised that not hiring John isn't such a big deal. It's not like he'll never find another job, it's just that I personally don't want to work with him. My wife and I decided to stick to our decision, but this hasn't sat well with my parents. They've been spreading rumours suggesting I'm jealous of my brother, which is why I'm taking this chance to act against my family. I don't understand why they're taking this so hard, especially since they've been messaging every single relative about it. It's clear they're going out of their way to paint me as the bad guy in a bid for attention. I've blocked them, and no matter what, I'm not unblocking them to discuss this. Some relatives who've reached out have sent me screenshots of these messages. I've explained the entire situation to them, and most are aware of our strained relationship over the past 3 years. After I clarified things, most relatives reassured me that they wouldn't turn against me, knowing my parents are just overreacting. Right now, I'm feeling more at ease, especially with my wife's pregnancy. I don't think I have time to worry about these issues. We've been considering announcing the pregnancy earlier than planned, hoping it might make my parents back off, although we're not sure if it will work given their recent heartlessness. My wife and I announced the pregnancy on social media a few days ago. It's been about 9 days since I last spoke with my parents. While most of my family congratulated us, I received an anonymous email stating that my child would suffer because of my actions towards my family. I immediately suspected my parents were behind this cruel message. It's appalling that they would wish ill on an unborn child just because I refused to hire John. He hadn't even approached me directly for help. which might have made me consider the request differently. I decided not to tell my wife about the email to avoid upsetting her during the early stages of her pregnancy. Instead, I chose to handle this on my own. I went to my parents' house to confront them in person, and since I didn't want to unblock them. However, they refused to even open the door, likely knowing why I was there. This whole situation has been very disappointing, but I'm focusing on the well-being of my growing family. A job because he was struggling and couldn't find work on his own. John was genuinely surprised and upset to hear this. He apologised for any stress this might have caused me, and made it clear he had no intention of asking me for a job. He had always wanted to handle his own issues independently and felt betrayed that our parents were using him as a pawn to manipulate me. I expressed my frustrations to my parents right outside their house. I lost my temper, overwhelmed by years of pent-up feelings. I told them they had no right to exploit my success or push me to share it with John, especially since they hadn't supported me when I needed it most. Their actions and demands over the years had only pushed me further away. I made it clear that their behaviour was unacceptable, and because of it, I no longer wanted any relationship with them. Even if they apologised, I wouldn't forgive them. They wouldn't see me help them in their retirement, nor would they have a relationship with their grandchild. After delivering my message, I left, feeling a significant weight lifted off my shoulders. This confrontation had been long overdue. I haven't yet shared this encounter with my wife because I don't want to add any stress during her pregnancy. I plan to keep this to myself until after our baby is born. After confronting my parents, they seemed to back off, keeping a low profile. We hosted a pregnancy announcement party, which went smoothly without any drama from them, leading me to believe they might have finally moved on. However, a surprising call from John interrupted that peace. Initially, I ignored his calls, suspecting he might be echoing our parents' demands. But after he reached out several times, stating it was urgent and assuring he wasn't asking for favours, I decided to answer. John explained that he had been out of touch due to his depression, not responding to messages or calls. It was only recently that he checked his messages and learned about the controversy stirred by our parents. Confused, he confronted them, but they denied everything. Feeling they were dishonest, he reached out to me for the truth. I decided it was only fair to tell John everything, how our parents had used his situation to try to manipulate me into hiring him without his consent. He was shocked and hurt, realising our parents had lied to both of us. We ended our conversation with a better understanding of each other's situations, and John thanked me for my honesty. It was a relief to clear the air and confirm that none of the tension between us had been his fault. A favour to him. I shared with John that perhaps our parents had started with the intention to help him stabilise his life after his job loss, but their approach shifted into pressuring me, which was something I couldn't support. I expressed my sympathy for his situation, acknowledging how tough it must have been to lose a job that meant so much to him. Yet, I also reminded him that our historical difficulties in getting along were the main reason I declined our parents' request to hire him. John understood and explained that he wasn't looking to work with me or anyone else at the moment. He clarified that he did have job offers but chose to hold off on them to take a much-needed break. This was his personal decision, independent of the job market or any offers. He shared that our parents had misrepresented his situation, making it seem like he was desperate, which wasn't true at all. During our conversation, John vented his frustrations, and I listened. It was important for him to express how he felt, especially considering that we hadn't been close. He was particularly upset about how our parents had portrayed him as desperate and manipulative, which had given others the wrong impression about his circumstances. After fully discussing these issues, John apologised for the unintended stress this situation had caused me. He appreciated the chat, acknowledging that it was a sign of maturity and growth on his part, perhaps spurred by his recent professional setbacks, which had taught him humility and the impermanent nature of life's successes. A couple of days after our conversation, John decided to confront our parents about their actions. He explained to them that their interference and the way they depicted his situation was misleading and unhelpful. Unfortunately, the conversation did not go smoothly. When John tried to assert his desire to take control of his life and make his own decisions, including taking a break from work, our parents became defensive. They insisted they were just trying to help and didn't understand his decision to pause his career. The discussion escalated into a significant argument. John pointed out that they had always tried to control his decisions, even into adulthood, which he resented. My parents countered by listing all they had done for him, failing to recognise that their basic parental responsibilities weren't favours or bargaining chips. From what John told me, the confrontation didn't resolve much, but made it clear that he was trying to establish boundaries and assert his independence. Although the situation remained tense, it was a step forward for John in dealing with our parents' overbearing tendencies. This episode, while stressful, seemed to have opened up a dialogue that was long overdue, showing that even in difficult family dynamics, communication could lead to personal growth and clearer understanding among all parties involved. It wasn't a favour, they were obligated to do it anyway. Despite this, a huge argument erupted between John and our parents, leading to him cutting off communication with them. And, unsurprisingly, they started pointing fingers at me for their fallout, making me the scapegoat in yet another family conflict. This time, they didn't confront me directly, but chose to air their grievances on Facebook, blaming me for the entire situation. Fortunately, our relatives quickly came to my defence. They called out my parents on their post, highlighting not just their poor treatment towards me, but also their controlling behaviour towards John. They emphasised that instead of supporting him through his tough times with empathy and encouragement, our parents had only added to his stress by trying to manage his life and portraying him negatively. Faced with this backlash from our relatives, our parents eventually deleted the Facebook post and even went as far as blocking everyone from my family. This move essentially led to them being ostracised by the family, and honestly, I feel relieved about it. It's clear now that everyone sees the reality of their actions. In the midst of all this, John reached out to me to apologise for his past behaviour. We've decided to work on mending our relationship and moving forward. It's a slow process, but it feels like a step in the right direction. More importantly, I'm focusing on the future, particularly on my wife and the excitement of becoming a father. This new chapter in my life is what truly matters, and I'm looking forward to what lies ahead with my growing family. "5 years ago, my life took a dramatic turn, all because of my younger sister Ellie's actions, which shattered my then harmonious world. At 27, I found myself at the centre of an emotional storm I'd never anticipated, especially given that it involved my sister, who had long been the favoured child in our family. Back then, I was deeply involved with my girlfriend Ava. We'd been dating for about a year and everything was falling into place perfectly. Ava was not just my partner, she was the kind of person who brought light into every room she entered. A labour and delivery nurse by profession, her stories about work and her passion for helping children always left me in awe. Meanwhile, I worked as an engineering director and shared the intricacies of my projects with her, grateful for her patient ear. Our relationship, though not without its challenges, was built on mutual support and understanding. However, the serenity of our relationship was disrupted by Ellie. Despite our rocky history, we had reached a sort of truce as adults. Yet, Ellie always seemed to outshine me in the eyes of our parents, from her school achievements to landing a prestigious job straight out of college. My own achievements, though significant to me, often went unnoticed. The true upheaval came unexpectedly when Ava suddenly accused me of cheating, a claim that was as shocking as it was untrue. She was convinced by evidence Ellie had shown her, including manipulated text messages and photos. Despite my attempts to explain and prove my innocence, Ava cut off all contact, leaving me distraught and bewildered. As days turned into weeks, I was consumed by the need to understand and untangle the web of lies. It became clear that Ellie had meticulously fabricated all the evidence. When confronted, she admitted to her deceit with chilling indifference, saying she couldn't bear to see me happy. It was a devastating realization of the lengths she would go to sabotage my happiness. My parents, ever supportive of Ellie, dismissed my grievances, choosing to believe I had somehow provoked her actions. This betrayal from both my sister and my parents left me isolated and fueled a desire for retribution, which I eventually acted on by exposing Ellie's own misdeeds at a significant moment in her life. Reflecting on these tumultuous events, I see a saga of love, betrayal, and eventual vindication, all sparked by familial jealousy and the wounds it can inflict. As I piece together the remnants of past relationships and family ties, the journey through heartbreak and revenge has been both painful and enlightening. It always went the same way with them. I tried my best to explain the truth about Ellie's manipulation and deceit, that she had fabricated evidence and wrecked my relationship, but they simply wouldn't listen. My mum would dismissively pat my hand and insist, "I'm sure you're exaggerating, dear. Ellie wouldn't do that." My dad's response was no better, bluntly telling me to man up and stop blaming my sister for my own romantic troubles. Their reactions only fueled my resolve not to let this go unchallenged. I decided then that Ellie would face consequences, but I knew I needed to bide my time and wait for the perfect opportunity. Over the next 4 years, I played the long game. I maintained a facade of normalcy, acting as if all was well between Ellie and me. I even started spending more time with her and her boyfriend James, who was genuinely a great guy. James was everything you'd want in a partner. Successful, attractive, from a good family, but above all, he was kind and thoughtful. He never missed a birthday, was always ready to lend a hand, and had a knack for making people feel appreciated. Yet, despite his virtues, Ellie treated him like an accessory, flaunting him at social gatherings while secretly rolling her eyes at his words and showing impatience with his actions when she thought no one was watching. Meanwhile, I focused on my career, earning promotions and better pay. I even tried dating again, though my trust was severely shaken by my past with Ava. About 8 months ago, I noticed changes in Ellie's behaviour. Constant texting, secretive smiles, frequent solo outings. It didn't take long to figure out she was having an affair. Rather than confronting her, I chose to gather evidence quietly. It may sound extreme, but I needed solid proof. I managed to capture photos of her with another man and screenshots of their conversations. The other man, John, was a co-worker of hers, arrogant and brash, the complete opposite of James. The messages between Ellie and John were filled with mockery towards James, calling him boring and predictable, which sickened me. Last week, James shared with me his plans to propose to Ellie with a family heirloom ring, and he was bursting with excitement about their future. Knowing this, I realised the time had come to act. On the day of his planned proposal, which was set at a large surprise party with friends and family, just as James was about to propose, I seized the moment to reveal the truth. I stood up and asked for everyone's attention, then laid out the evidence of Ellie's affair. I recounted how she had sabotaged my relationship out of spite 5 years prior, and described this moment as karma's return. The room fell into stunned silence. James, utterly shocked and heartbroken, walked out. Ellie, caught in her deceit, oscillated between begging him to return and furiously accusing me. The chaos was palpable, with our parents scrambling to calm the storm to no avail. In the aftermath of that day, a distraught Ellie showed up at my apartment, tearful and demanding that I fix the mess I had revealed. However, the damage was done, and the truth of her actions had irreversibly changed everything. Ellie confronted me in my apartment, tears streaming down her face, accusing me of ruining her life. James was the best thing that ever happened to me, she cried. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly, telling her, "Now you know how it feels." She kept repeating, "How could you do this to me? I'm your sister." I threw her own actions back at her, questioning how she could sabotage my relationship with Ava, deceive her into believing I was unfaithful. Ellie appeared genuinely baffled, dismissing her past actions as ancient history she assumed I had moved past. That's when I lost my composure. I laid into her, telling her straight how selfish and cruel she had always been, how our parents' favoritism had morphed her into someone monstrous. I told her she deserved everything coming to her. She left my apartment distraught, and we haven't spoken since. Meanwhile, my parents bombarded me with calls and messages, accusing me of tearing the family apart. They demanded I apologise to Ellie and somehow mend things with James. Reflecting over the past few days, I felt a mix of emotions. James was a decent man, and I did feel sorry for him, but a part of me felt Ellie finally received her comeuppance. Update. A month has passed since these events unfolded, and the aftermath has been chaotic. My family is in disarray. My parents, predictably outraged, have oscillated between guilt-tripping me and threatening to cut ties unless I make amends with Ellie. I've largely ignored them, except to firmly state that I won't be apologising, and they are free to sever our connection if they choose. That silenced them temporarily, but they resumed their efforts after a few days. Ellie has stayed out of direct contact since her breakdown, and I've heard from friends she's been isolating herself, missing work, and avoiding social interactions. Any residual guilt dissipates whenever I recall her cruel satisfaction at my own heartbreak. In an unexpected twist, Ava reached out to me. She had caught wind of the incident and wanted to meet. Sitting across from her after 2 years was surreal. She apologised for not believing me back then, admitting that the recent revelations about Ellie had made her question everything. We caught up on our lives, her promotions, my career progressions. Despite a part of me still caring for Ava when she tentatively suggested we try rekindling our relationship, I knew too much had changed. I gently declined and we parted on amicable terms, unsure if we would keep in touch. James also reached out, wanting to meet at a local bar. Arriving there, I found him a shadow of his former self, haggard with dark circles under his eyes and an unkempt beard. He barely acknowledged me as I sat down, his demeanour speaking volumes of his distress. When I settled into my seat across from James, he looked at me with mixed emotions. "I owe you a thank you," he said, "and maybe a punch in the face." I tensed, anticipating his next move, but he just sighed deeply and took a long sip of his beer. "I'm grateful you told me about Ellie," he continued. "I needed to know. But did you have to expose her in front of everyone?" His question made me realise the impact of my actions, and I sincerely apologised. I had been so blinded by my desire for revenge against Ellie that I hadn't considered how it would affect James. He accepted my apology, and we sat together in reflective silence, the noise of the bar fading into the background. As the evening progressed, James opened up about his relationship with Ellie. He shared how he had been planning to propose for months, but kept hesitating because something didn't feel quite right. He confessed that part of him felt relieved to have learned the truth before making a lifelong commitment. Our conversation deepened, and I told him about my troubled history with Ellie, our parents' favouritism, and the sabotage of my relationship with Ava. James was shocked, realising he had known very little about the real Ellie. By the end of the night, an unlikely friendship had begun to form between us. We exchanged numbers, promising to stay in touch. Over the following weeks, James and I began to hang out regularly. We'd meet for drinks, catch a game together, and talk about just about everything. One evening, James came over to my place looking particularly distressed. "Ellie's been trying to contact me," he explained. She had been calling him, texting, and had even shown up at his workplace, pleading for another chance. I asked him what he planned to do. James was clearly torn. On one hand, they had been together for 2 years, but on the other, he knew he could never trust her again after her deceitful behaviour. The next day, he met Ellie for coffee. He called me afterward to let me know he had ended things definitively. He deserved better, he said, and had made it clear to Ellie that her cheating was not a mere mistake, but a deliberate series of choices. Ellie's reaction was volatile. She alternated between tears and anger, even trying to blame me, claiming I had poisoned James against her. But James remained firm, telling her that I had merely revealed the truth. Following their final conversation, Ellie's behaviour spiralled. She began posting vague, attention-seeking messages on social media, portraying herself as the victim. Predictably, our parents sided with her, pressuring me to apologise and help mend her relationship with James. When I refused, they even threatened to disinherit me. I stood my ground, asserting that my integrity was worth more than their inheritance. This whole ordeal confirmed just how toxic my family dynamics were, prompting me to seek therapy to navigate these complex relationships and establish healthier boundaries. Work became a refuge where I immersed myself in a significant project, earning recognition and a potential promotion. As for my personal life, it's currently on pause. Friends have tried setting me up, but I'm not ready. I need time to focus on healing and understanding myself better. Maybe someday I'll be ready to trust again, but for now, I'm content being on my own. James, for his part, seems to be coping well. He's taken up regular workouts at the gym, finding his own ways to heal and move forward. James has been channeling his frustrations into productive outlets, which is inspiring to see. He's taken up cooking classes, a passion he always had but one that Ellie had discouraged. It's refreshing to witness him pursuing his interests and focusing on his own well-being and happiness. As for the future, my relationship with my parents remains tense, and I'm unsure if it will ever fully recover. Ellie, from what I've been told, is still struggling significantly. She's taken a leave from her job, and there are whispers that she might lose her position due to the ongoing impact of her personal issues on her professional life. While I feel a twinge of satisfaction at her facing consequences, I'm also reflective on the whole ordeal. James and I have planned a camping trip for next month, a much-needed retreat from all the drama. This whole saga, particularly exposing Ellie's affair, has been tumultuous, but I don't regret bringing the truth to light. Thank you to everyone who's followed my story. I'll sign off now, ready to live my life on my own terms, finally stepping out from under Ellie's shadow. Final update. A year has passed since my last post, and much has changed, prompting me to share this final update as I close this chapter of my life. After the exposure of her affair and the breakdown of her relationship with James, Ellie's situation worsened before it got any better. She ended up losing her job, a result of her extended absences, and the rumours that spilled over into her professional life. Eventually, she moved back in with our parents, who coddled her and painted her as a victim, blaming me for her downfall. However, the facade didn't last. About 2 months later, Ellie had a major confrontation with our parents. Overwhelmed by their expectations and the weight of her actions, she confessed to everything she had done to me and Ava. It was a tumultuous revelation that led to a lot of emotional upheaval, and eventually, Ellie moved out to live independently, working a retail job and regularly attending therapy. Regarding my parents, following Ellie's confession, they reached out to reconcile. Initially, I was resistant, still hurt by their years of favouritism. But with guidance from my therapist, I decided to meet with them. It was an awkward reunion filled with apologies and uneasy silences. They admitted their mistakes and acknowledged their failings as parents. While I appreciated their honesty, I made it clear that rebuilding our relationship would take time. Over the past year, we've been making slow progress. There are still challenges and old habits sometimes resurface, but there's a genuine effort on their part to engage with my life and career, and I'm learning to let them back in, bit by bit. Now, about James. Our camping trip was exactly what we both needed. A week away from technology and the demands of daily life, giving us space to think and heal. James is thriving in his cooking classes and discovering a real knack for culinary arts. He's even started dreaming of opening his own restaurant. As for his romantic life, he's taking things slow, focusing on himself before jumping back into dating. This journey has been one of immense personal growth and reflection. It's been challenging, but ultimately rewarding to navigate these complex family dynamics and find a path forward. About 4 months ago, James began dating again, and he seems really happy with his new girlfriend. She's down to earth and genuinely kind, qualities that make it easy to see why James is drawn to her. Our friendship continues to thrive. We regularly meet up for beers and sports, sharing a bond that feels more like brotherhood. This connection is something I've always desired but never fully experienced with Ellie. Professionally, I secured the promotion my boss had hinted at. The additional responsibilities have pushed me out of my comfort zone, but it's been a positive force for growth. I'm proud of my achievements and enthusiastic about the direction my career is taking. On a personal note, after some time spent focusing on healing, I've started dating again. I met Mia at a work conference 4 months ago. We connected instantly over our mutual appreciation for obscure sci-fi novels and our love for crafting terrible puns. When I shared my past experiences with Ellie and Kathy, Mia was incredibly supportive. She reassured me that the difficulties I faced weren't my fault and affirmed that I deserve happiness just as much as anyone else. It's early days with Mia, but we're building our relationship on a foundation of trust and open communication. Ava and I have maintained a cordial but distant connection. We occasionally interact on social media or exchange greetings on special occasions, but our romantic relationship is firmly in the past. I'm thankful that we could find closure and move on amicably. As for Ellie, our interactions have been minimal and strained. The last significant encounter was during a family dinner our parents arranged, which was awkward and tense. Ellie's attempts to act normal were interspersed with resentful glances my way. We've mutually agreed that maintaining our distance is best for now. Perhaps one day we'll be ready to have a meaningful discussion about all that transpired, but that time hasn't come yet. Reflecting on the past 4 years, it's astounding how much my life has transformed. The anger and bitterness that once drove me have diminished. I still believe that Ellie's actions were wrong, and I don't regret exposing her affair. As I pen this final update from my new apartment, free from the shadows of Ellie's betrayal, I feel a sense of peace. Looking out at the sunset, I'm preparing for a cozy movie night with Mia and a brunch with James and his girlfriend tomorrow. Life isn't perfect. It never is. But it's good. Really good. I'm reaching out for some advice on a personal matter. To ensure privacy, I'm using a throwaway account and fictitious names. Here's a bit about me. I'm a 26-year-old game developer in Bath. Despite a successful career marked by a recent promotion, I've been feeling somewhat unfulfilled, proving the old adage that money can't buy happiness. My major source of discontent is my family dynamics. I lost my mum in a car accident when I was 16, a traumatic event that was compounded when my dad remarried just a year later. He married Sophia, who has never really made me feel welcome. They had my half-sister Mila, who is now 14, and the one family member I feel genuinely connected to. Sophia has always tried to keep Mila at a distance from me, but fortunately we've remained close. Growing up, I always felt like an outsider in my father's new family. My efforts to stay involved often felt unreciprocated, making our relationship feel like a one-sided endeavour. A few weeks ago, my dad called me unexpectedly during work hours to ask for help with moving to a new house, a task Sophia had been wanting for a long time. Eager for a chance to bond, I took some time off and prepared thoroughly, buying new tools and equipment for the move. On moving day, I arrived early, ready to make an impression and hopefully strengthen our relationship. However, I was met with indifference from Sophia and a mere nod from my dad. As I laboured hard, moving furniture and packing boxes, Sophia openly praised the hired movers, ignoring my efforts. To add insult to injury, Sophia accidentally broke a photo frame with my childhood picture and dismissed it as trash, a sentiment my father did nothing to counter. To make matters worse, Mila was sent away for the day, likely to keep her from interacting with me. I'm left feeling more like an outsider than ever, and I'm uncertain about how to proceed with my relationship with my dad and his new family. Any advice on how to handle this situation would be greatly appreciated. Throughout the day, I shifted things around, but the weight of the moment lingered. As I rummaged, I stumbled upon childhood items stuffed in garbage bags, seemingly discarded. Shocked, I realised these were memories I had assumed were safely stored, or perhaps lost forever. Instead, they were destined for the trash. Secretly, I saved a few precious pieces and hid them in my car's trunk. The new house contrasted sharply with the old one, large, modern, and nestled in a wealthy neighbourhood. Sophia was thriving, eagerly giving a grand tour to a gathering of friends and family. I lingered at the back, feeling increasingly alienated, like a visitor in a stranger's life story. Sophia, absorbed in showcasing the upscale kitchen and vast living room, didn't include me. I overheard her expressing relief to my dad that the move was behind them as a fresh start awaited. That's when I heard it, the conversation that broke me. My dad echoed her sentiments, implying the move was a step away from past mistakes, which I knew referred to me. The urge to confront them was overwhelming, but I restrained myself to avoid a scene. However, as the guests departed and emotion surged, I confronted them. Sophia responded with feigned concern, suggesting I had misunderstood. My dad tried to mediate, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, but I couldn't hold back any longer. I unleashed years of bottled-up emotions about feeling like an outsider and being treated as an afterthought by them. Sophia's indifference was palpable. She dismissed my feelings with a roll of her eyes, cautioning me against causing a scene. Overwhelmed, I left, tears barely restrained, refusing to let them see the depth of my hurt. The drive back was a blur of turmoil, and upon reaching my apartment, I withdrew from the world, taking days off under the guise of illness. A few days later, a terse text from my dad arrived, apologising for the heated exchange, but clearly more concerned with appearances than genuine reconciliation. Later, scrolling through Facebook, I found Sophia's post from the housewarming party, a glaring reminder of my exclusion. Everyone was tagged but me, and the narrative spun was that I was too engulfed in work to attend. The next day, I confronted them again, only to receive dismissive justifications and hollow assurances. It was clear they were keen on minimising my presence in their lives, relegating me to the background as a mere oversight from their past. At first, I was tempted to pull off a dramatic stunt to make them truly regret how they'd been treating me. But then, an idea formed from a past favour I'd done for them. I'd set up their entire home system when they first moved in, giving me access to everything: lights, thermostat, security cameras, even the smart locks. As I mulled it over, the notion of subtly disrupting their daily life grew more enticing. I decided to engage in minor, irritating tactics. Not anything too harsh, just enough to unsettle their comfort. It was petty, yes, but in my mind they had it coming. I began with the lights, making them flicker at random intervals. It was subtle, not enough to cause alarm, but just enough to annoy. Next was the TV, which I programmed to turn on and off at inconvenient times, especially when Sophia was settled in for her evening shows. Then I tampered with the thermostat, alternating the house temperature from stifling heat to bone-chilling cold during the night. The security system was my next target. I programmed it to trigger false alarms sporadically throughout the week, timed perfectly when they were beginning to relax. Using the security cameras, I watched their frustration mount with each new disruption. There was a perverse satisfaction in seeing Sophia's panic over the flickering lights, or the TV suddenly changing channels. It was like my own private show. Their bafflement escalated to the point where they suspected the house was haunted. I even overheard my dad describing the strange occurrences to a friend over the phone. Sophia, thoroughly convinced, hired a psychic to cleanse the house. I watched, barely stifling laughter, as the psychic earnestly waved sage around, chanting and performing her rituals. Unfortunately, my younger cousin Mila got swept up in the drama too. She became genuinely frightened, convinced her room harboured shadows waiting to pounce. This made me feel a twinge of guilt. My intention was never to scare her. But the situation escalated when my tech-savvy nephew visited. He noticed something off with the home system and quickly uncovered signs of my tampering. My tracks weren't well hidden, and he didn't take long to trace the disruptions back to me. I thought that might be the end of my antics, but then came an unexpected knock on my apartment door. It was my dad, looking more desperate than I had ever seen him. Without any pleasantries, he directly asked if I was behind the weird occurrences at their house. Facing him, I couldn't lie. I admitted everything and explained why I did it. He was shocked, probably not expecting such honesty. The argument that followed was heated. He accused me of being childish and taking things too far. I retaliated, airing years of grievances about feeling excluded and marginalised by him and Sophia. The confrontation was loud enough that neighbours began to peer out, drawn by the commotion. After our intense exchange, my dad left, looking defeated. The fallout was immediate. Sophia appeared at my workplace, thankfully not causing a scene, but clearly there to confront me. The incident wasn't taken lightly by my boss, and I ended up having to explain the entire messy affair. Word spread fast through the family, spearheaded by my dad. I was soon bombarded with angry texts and calls from relatives, while social media became a battlefield of passive-aggressive posts and divided loyalties. Yet, some relatives reached out in support, understanding the depth of my frustrations. At first, reactions were mixed. Some understood why I had acted out, while others branded me as immature and vindictive. Through all the chaos, Mila remained silent. A few days later, she reached out privately, telling me she missed me and didn't believe the negative things her mum was saying. Her message resonated deeply with me. It was comforting to know she still cared, despite the turmoil. Around the same time, I began noticing an influx of advertisements for DNA testing kits on every digital corner. Whether it was mere coincidence or the universe pointing me towards a revelation during my ongoing family crisis, I decided to take the plunge. Curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to explore my ancestry. Weeks later, the results arrived, and they shattered my world. The man I had always called Dad was not my biological father. At first, I was in denial, double-checking the results, but they were unequivocal. Suddenly, past interactions took on new meaning. The distant behaviour from my dad, the way Sophia had edged me out, it all clicked. I was never truly part of their family. Compelled by a need for closure, I confronted my dad and Sophia with the DNA results in hand. My dad's reaction was one of utter shock. He confessed that my mother had an affair with his best friend, and I was the result. Sophia's reaction was chilling. Her initial shock quickly gave way to a smug satisfaction, as if she now had ammunition against me. I felt a wave of nausea realising I had been clinging to a semblance of family that never really existed. After the confrontation, I made the painful decision to sever ties with my dad and Sophia. It was clear there was nothing left to salvage. They were never truly family in the emotional sense. It was a tough decision, but one that felt necessary for my own well-being. The hardest part was figuring out what to do about Mila. She was innocent in all of this, and I didn't want to lose our connection. We've continued to communicate secretly, and I've reassured her that I'll always be there for her, no matter what. Family reactions were mixed. Some supportive, others furious, and a few remained neutral, preferring to stay out of the drama. I can't blame them. It's a complex and messy situation. As for searching for my biological father, I am undecided. He's never reached out, so perhaps it's best to leave that chapter closed. The overwhelming consensus was to maintain no contact with my dad and Sophia. Despite this advice, I reached out to my dad before posting my original story. I was looking for some kind of affirmation that reaching out wasn't a huge mistake, or maybe I just needed to clear the air before any further fallout. Regardless, I was the one who broke the no contact rule. It wasn't a grand gesture. I didn't stand under his window with a boombox over my head playing In Your Eyes. It was a straightforward, brief text. We need to talk. Can we meet up this week? I didn't receive an immediate reply, which left me second-guessing my decision and feeling foolish for even trying. However, by evening, my phone finally buzzed. It was my dad responding simply with, "Sure, when and where?" So why did I do it? Why breach the no-contact rule when even my own better judgment screamed that it was a mistake? The answer is simple. I needed closure. There were too many unresolved issues haunting me. The DNA test, my mum's affair, years of feeling out of place. All of it weighed heavily on me, and walking away without any resolution was something I just couldn't do. This wasn't entirely about forgiveness or reconciliation. It was about understanding. I needed to know why my dad had treated me the way he did, why he allowed Sophia to dominate, and why he never revealed the truth about my parentage. I needed these answers to move forward, and avoiding him wasn't going to help me find them. I understand that many might view this as a weak move, that I was setting myself up for more disappointment and pain. Believe me, I've wrestled with those thoughts too. I've read the comments labelling me a pushover, a doormat. But here's the thing. This isn't about weakness. It's about personal growth. I've spent my entire life letting others control my story, dictating how things should unfold. Reaching out to my dad was about taking control of my own narrative, on my own terms. Yes, it was risky, but necessary for my own peace of mind. If I didn't take this step, I knew I'd never truly be able to move on. We agreed to meet at my place. I didn't want to meet at his house, especially not with Sophia around. She has a way of exacerbating already tense situations, and I didn't need her interference in this delicate conversation. Plus, being in my own space, I felt more comfortable and in control. In the days leading up to our meeting, I was a nervous wreck. I played out various scenarios in my head, pondering his possible reactions. Defensive, apologetic. Maybe he wouldn't show up at all. The uncertainty was maddening. When the day finally arrived, I found myself pacing in my living room, checking the clock every few minutes. Right on time, there was a knock at the door. Opening it, I saw my dad standing there, looking a bit older and more tired than I remembered. It had only been a few weeks since we last saw each other, but it felt like years had passed. We exchanged a tense, awkward greeting. No hug, no handshake, just a muttered, "Hey," from both of us. He followed me into the living room, taking a seat on the couch while I settled into an armchair across from him. We sat in silence for a moment, neither of us sure how to begin. Eventually, I initiated some small talk to break the ice, chatting about work, the weather, and some new tech gadgets we'd both been eyeing. It was trivial, but it helped ease us into the more serious conversation that needed to happen. Once the atmosphere had warmed slightly, the conversation shifted. I could see my dad's demeanour change. He became more guarded, aware of the heavier topics looming. I didn't want to dance around the subject any longer. I brought up the DNA test, the affair, and everything that had been revealed recently. I asked him directly why he had never told me the truth, why he allowed me to grow up believing I was his son. When I confronted him, his initial reaction was defensive. He explained that he had hidden the truth to protect me, believing it was better if I didn't know. He admitted that he had been unsure how to handle the situation after my mum passed away, and by the time he remarried, it just seemed easier to let things be as they were. His apology followed, but it felt half-hearted. More like he was apologising because he knew he should, not because he genuinely felt remorse. I pressed him further, bringing up specific instances from my childhood when he seemed distant or allowed Sophia to treat me as an outsider. He claimed he hadn't realised how severe things had become, confessing that he was too engulfed in his own grief and the challenges of building a new life to notice the effect on me. At one point, he became emotional, discussing his struggles after my mum's death, even after she had been unfaithful, and how ill-equipped he felt being a single parent, especially to a child who wasn't biologically his. He insisted he had always loved me, though he acknowledged he hadn't shown it properly. The conversation turned to Sophia. I pointed out how she had manipulated him and dismissed me as a nuisance. He didn't deny this, but he didn't fully admit the extent of her negative influence either. He tried to justify her behaviour by suggesting she was just trying to do her best in her own way. It was evident he was still in denial about her toxic actions, which was incredibly frustrating. I tried to make him understand how deeply Sophia's actions had hurt me and made me feel excluded from the family. He listened, but I wasn't convinced he fully grasped the impact. It seemed he still wanted to believe that Sophia had good intentions, even if her actions suggested otherwise. This showed me he was caught between defending his wife and acknowledging the pain they had caused me. As we moved past discussing our painful history, I steered the conversation toward the future. I asked him what he envisioned going forward and whether he saw a place for me in his life. He said he did, but I made it clear that for any relationship to continue, things would have to change dramatically. I emphasised that moving forward would require real, tangible changes in how we interacted and how he managed his relationship with Sophia, especially in how it affected me. We left the conversation with a tentative hope for a better future, but I knew it would take effort and possibly time to heal and possibly rebuild something genuine between us. I realised I needed to establish clear boundaries. Sophia could not be part of our interactions, at least for the foreseeable future. Her manipulative behaviour was something I could no longer tolerate. He agreed, though I could see it was difficult for him. We discussed setting up regular meetings, just the three of us, to begin mending our relationship. It was a challenging agreement to make, but it felt like a necessary step forward. I wasn't ready to fully re-engage, but I also wasn't prepared to sever ties completely. As our conversation wound down, the emotional exhaustion from our deep, sometimes painful discussions was palpable. With little left to say, we concluded our meeting. We stood and shared an awkward, hesitant hug. It was one of those tentative embraces where neither person really knows how to proceed. It wasn't much, but it was something. After he left, closing the door quietly behind him, I sank into my couch, overwhelmed by the need to process everything. For now, I decided to maintain a limited, controlled contact with him. I wasn't going to dive headfirst back into the relationship, but I wasn't ready to cut him out of my life either. It was a compromise, one I hoped would allow me the space I needed to heal while keeping the door ajar for a possible future reconciliation. I know some might still think I'm making a mistake, setting myself up for more heartache, and perhaps they're right. But this was a step I needed to take for myself. I needed to confront my father and address the issues that had been haunting me for years. It wasn't easy and it didn't magically resolve everything, but it was a step forward. I appreciate all of the advice and support you all have given me, even if I didn't follow it to the letter. At the end of the day, this is my life, and I have to make decisions that feel right for me, even if they aren't the most popular ones. That's where things stand right now. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I'm hopeful that I can find some peace with all of this one way or another. Thanks again for all your input and even the tough love. It's helped me more than you know. I'll probably continue to lurk around here for a while. Now, I've got a lot of personal and relational work to do, and it's time to focus on that.